Hello, welcome everybody. I am Lisa Schrader, if we haven't met, and I'm here with my dear friend Elizabeth Purvis, who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. I am a coach and a mentor and the founder of Awakening Shakti. And my specialty is coaching and mentoring high achieving professional women who are also spiritual women. And they're the kind of women who are really done being driven by pressure, and they're really ready to be powered by pleasure instead. And I help them do that by connecting with what I call their Shakti, their body, heart, and spirit. And so imagine my delight and joy when my colleague Elizabeth Purvis contacted me and shared this beautiful new book that she wrote called Seven Figure Goddess. Because one of the things I really love about Elizabeth is that she is so grounded in these principles of Shakti, of the divine feminine, but she also just rocks it when it comes to business, and particularly helping people like us, coaches and transformational leaders, really take their business to the next level. So let me just read her bio for you real quickly so you get grounded in who she is. She's a master offers and messaging strategist and a metaphysical teacher for transformational leaders. She's the founder and the CEO of Seven Figure Goddess, the premier business mentoring company for magicians, people like us, coaches, healers, energy workers, and spiritual teachers who want to bring their highest level work to the world, also by way of having a high income and a high profit business. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting. I mean, we worked together where I was the client like 10 years ago. And I just feel like this is such a beautiful full circle moment. Like the time that time with you is really, really impactful for me. So it's super exciting to be able to come back and share space with you so many years on in both of our journeys.
I just love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of that feminine cycle of business, the way, we're impacted by people, because you impacted me too then, and then we're off, you had a baby. Now your
I
baby's
did. I had a baby. You were helping me like get
yeah,
back into my Shakti
that's right.
right around the time of my baby. And that was like such a initiation, right? So yeah. And now she's 10, like she's
Right.
10.
Yeah. 10 years ago. Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
so I'm so
Yeah.
excited that you wrote this book. I have to say, I just like couldn't stop reading it. And I'm a girl who loves a framework and a structure and a map. It just helps me ground and get centered and get anchored. And so I just love this book because you've got these 10 standards. And for those of you that haven't downloaded the book yet, there'll be a link here attached to the video so that you can go get it. And I also want to say she's got this beautiful little cheat sheet that you'll also get when you download the book, a special little gift that will come, but it's got all these beautiful standards. So I know we won't have time today to go through every single one. I really want to encourage you to get the book and go deep, but we're going to try to cover as many as we can. But before we do that, let's just back up. Tell me what prompted you to write the book at this point in your career? Why write the book?
Yeah. Thanks. Well, I wrote the book. I mean, some of the short answer to that, of course, is like I wrote the book because it was just time to get this out in a bigger way, because it really is like the number one thing that's impacted my clients the most, even above and beyond all the stuff we do with offers and messaging and pricing and, getting paid and all of that. And I wrote, the standards came through like about 5 years ago when I was teaching folks how to create and offer 50K to 100K programs, which isn't necessarily our focus now, but we were doing it then. And I wrote it because like one of the things I've noticed about transformational leaders, high achieving, high performing leaders, especially when they're trying to go from 6 to 7, or they want to create like a big money leap, is that they all come to us saying the same thing. And the thing that they say is, I'm really tired of working so friggin' hard. I'm tired of working hard. I'm tired of the push. Like on the strategy side of things, we teach folks how to get a lot more out of a lot less marketing by optimizing your offer and your message. And it's the same complaint. It's like, I'm working way too hard. Marketing's my second job. I'm tired of it. That's kind of my languaging, but that's what they say. And so that's on the strategy side. But here's the thing that I started to notice, like I created the standards because as soon as you say to someone, go offer a 50K program, all the crap comes up, like all of the, like, who am I? And how can I charge that? And what would I offer? And like, what's my downsell? And I don't want to leave people behind. And there's all this stuff. And even when they want to offer a program at that level, all that stuff comes up. So the standards were initially downloaded because I'm like, there's got to be a way to just have people shift out of that. Just go from that whole stew to, hi, I have a challenge. You have a challenge I can solve, and we're going to work together in a container for a year. It's going to be awesome. It's $50,000. Want to sign up? Like, I wanted it to be that simple. And they started doing that. and it started to get really pretty simple for them. Like, it was pretty mind blowing, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And then I realized kind of what happened later was connecting the dots that, like, wait a minute, like, the thing when people say that they don't want to work hard because people were feeling the uphill slog of offering a 50K program, when really offering a 50K program gets down to have a client who's got a 50K problem to solve and you invite them in. That's not hard. That's not hard. That doesn't have to be a push. That doesn't have to be a slog. What makes it feel hard, and what makes a lot of the things in our business feel hard, is what I call the inner friction. All of the stuff, the story and the narrative and the way that that actually impacts our body, right? When we're sitting there triggered, right? So 50K programs is one context, but I started to see other contexts. People would be like getting the back out email from their clients who are in their resistance point, and then they get all triggered because now I've got to deal with this back out email and I need that cash flow and da 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 da. Or like, I saw someone in my Facebook feed and they're copying me, and that would be a big thing. Like, in running, if you're going from 6 to 7, you have thing after thing after thing that's causing and creating emotional reactions, causing and creating the inner friction. And I would invite you to notice that what's on your to-do list, and I could even go through mine right here and now, like what's on it. It's like, send an email, follow up, talk to a team member. None of that stuff is hard.
Right.
But the narrative that we have around it makes it, and all of the inner drama makes it hard. And the standards helps you very quickly just shift out of that in the moment. It's like a tool to use in the moment, just to be like, all right, I'm out. And things feel easier. So that was a bit long-winded, I know, but hopefully it makes sense.
Beautiful. So I'm curious, just to continue with this piece, because like the to-dos, like I want to just kind of move maybe right into one of the standards that's a challenge for me, which is the discipline standard, which is like this place, right, where we know what needs to get done, right? And it's not that difficult to do, or it might even be pretty joyful to do. Like when I get stuck in that place, I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, I love my work. I love to do these things, really. Or even if I don't love them, I'm at least at acceptance level with them. Like, oh yeah, that has to get done. It's not usually stuff that I'm like, oh, I hate this stuff. It's not like that. So that inner, yes, maybe just speak a little bit more to that, like inner friction. Like what is that? And why does that get in our way so much? And particularly with this discipline standard, it was really helpful for me to like tune into what that is.
Yeah. So, and most of you listening to this, it's not your first rodeo with transformation. So you've heard these concepts before. But of course, we have our brain creates stories about things, creates narratives about things. And 99% of the time, those narratives aren't true. Like, let's say, oh, I don't know. I want to get this book out. So I want to set up 10 different tour stops. Let's just use that as an example.
Yeah, real one.
Right. Well, if I'm up, Right. If I'm up against my like visibility edge and I'm got concerns that like, well, what happens when all those people come in, and what happens if they, I don't have my email sequence ready, and like all of this stuff, it's like our brain is sitting there yammering away, based on its past reactions, past experiences, past everything, versus just reach out to Lisa and ask her if she wants to host an interview. Right. So a lot of times that's what it is. So that's part of it. Like that's part of it is just like if we want to offer a 50K program, we have all these preconceived ideas of what it is and what it means and what it's going to mean to everybody and their mom. And all that stuff is running, and it creates all this resistance. Really, it's resistance. It's inner resistance. And with the discipline standard, especially, it's like, and if we look at that, if we go from a transformation perspective, it's like whatever we're doing is going to create change, right? It's going to create an outcome. If I had 1,000 people, put this book in the hands of 1,000 people, things are going to be different than they were before. If I offer a 50K program, it's going to be different. And the number one thing that our brain is set up to do is to have us experience the familiar, right? Some of you might have heard the 3 brain theory. I know some of you know this, right? You've got the critter brain, you've got the limbic, the emotional brain, and the neocortex. Well, the critter brain is just sitting there going, am I dead yet? Am I dead yet? Am I dead yet? Am I dead yet? That's its criteria. Will this thing kill me or not? Like that's its criteria. So your neocortex is like, I want to go for it. And your critter brain's like, no. And it sets up this conflict in a nutshell. And it shows up as, I know this is like a really like fire hose style explanation, but it shows up as sitting down at your computer, looking at your to-do list going, I don't want to do it. And we often have really good reasons for that. So for a lot of high performing women, I work with a lot of women that have blown their circuits. They've done the adrenal fatigue, they've done the push, they've done all the stuff. And what I find is a lot of them are a hard no. They're just like, I'm not doing that again. So the pendulum swings back over to the other direction, which is just more, I mean, it's based in reality, it's based in experience. It's totally understandable someone would have that reaction, but it's like our brain blocks out any other possibilities and creates all this stuff when really all you got to do is just like sit down and make some asks. So a big piece that I work a lot with resistance, it's a, big part of my journey. That's overcoming it for myself. But like with something like, the standards themselves, and there's the 10 different ones, they keep us aligned with what's real. They keep us aligned with universal truth. And the discipline standard, especially, helps us really kind of like become aware of that when we let that inner friction run the show, like things don't happen and our dreams don't happen.
Yeah.
So to get back to your question, like the inner friction is essentially resistance that our brain sets up to keep us in the same spot. And part of why it's so important to be able to move through it. And in my view, to be able to move through it in a simple, graceful, easeful way that doesn't involve you like transforming your blocks for the next 5 years, which you all have already done. Exactly. Right. I often say that the standards work on the level of the conscious mind. They do. And I think the conscious mind is a great tool that often gets short shrift, right? In the transformation space, but they work on that level to remind your higher mind and your higher self, like my path is actually to do X and not let that stuff run the show. And it's not easy. I want to be really clear. Like I'm not flipping about any of this. But if we don't, if we let that stuff go, if we sit down day after day after day, not picking up the phone to offer the 50K program, whatever that's tied to, like we're not going to get that outcome. And that's a problem,
Right. Yeah, I can totally relate. And I think there's seasons and there's cycles, right? Like I talk about this a lot in my work. And so, if it feels like if the resistance is arising and you're in a more winter phase of your life and you're trying to grow something and it's not your season to do it, there's wisdom in adjusting. But for the most part, that's not the case for me. Like for the most part, it's my critter brain. It's,
Yeah.
my tendency to want to go with my resistance into like, oh, well, let me really understand my resistance. And I can spend like days and
I
weeks,
know.
processing my resistance. And really it tends to be much more simple, like ask for help, ask for support, you know, do one thing, do the next thing. And then as soon as I do that, and it also helps me to connect to what is the outcome I want. Like what's actually really important here. And when I
Yes.
tune into that, like it's very important for me to share these things that I have to share, create transformation for people. Why would I be hiding them? Why would I be not be giving my gift that I'm here to give? Like that's
Totally.
I don't want it to win, even though it feels so tangible. So this discipline standard I think it's a really helpful one to work with. And it feels like particularly for, I don't want to say women like us, but women like us, like
Oh my gosh.
who are in our feminine flow and, this
Yeah.
discipline piece, like you say in your book, maybe it's not the sexiest one, but it could be the most powerful.
Yeah. And just to define what it is for folks so they know. So the standards, the 10 standards are 10 things that just are. And that's kind of the mental hack behind of all of this. Like instead of negotiating whether or not abundance is a thing, abundance just is.
Is a
Instead
thing.
of negotiating with whether your awesomeness is, like your awesomeness just is, right? And that's the key sort of consciousness shift. And then we have 10 different of these principles, and the discipline standard is just like, well, you as a 7-figure transformational leader, because the 10 things are the things that I've seen are the most important ways of being if we want to scale to 7 figures. Like you as a 7-figure transformational leader, you just follow through. You just do. It
Mhm.
just is. You're
Mhm.
not arguing about following through. You're not getting in a battle about whether you're going to blow out your adrenals, because you know you're not going to blow out your adrenals because you're smarter than that, not to imply, right?
Exactly.
It's like your
Some
eyes are wide open. You're not going to, like we can stop the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and we can just be like, oh, well, as the one who has created this business, part of what I do every day is I make 3 asks,
mm,
or as someone who's written this book, I just get up and I follow through. I write the pages
mm,
without all this internal stuff, because it
yeah,
already is that you just follow through and do.
yeah.
And it's sort of a little bit my stealth mission to make everyone fall in love with discipline. And believe me, right? We teach what we need to learn. Like I've had my own journey with each of these
Yeah,
ongoing, right? But
yeah,
that one in particular is also really big for me because like discipline from a metaphysical level and follow through, it's where the non-physical and your dreams and your visions actually become real. It's the place, it's the energetic place, it's the move, it's the power move that brings things down from the 5D where it's already created and already exists into the 3D plane. And it's
right.
like,
When we take something,
that's like,
right, we take something that's got that kind of high vibrational energy and we bring it into the manifest world, which is so sloggy and slow and a totally different dimension. Of course, it's going to be there's going to be resistance, like to just normalize that and not let it
yeah,
fail us
right.
completely.
And just see it for what it is. Because it is a slower, like the 3D plane is a much slower energy, which I think, again, for women like us, is one of the things we get so frustrated with about it. It's like, well, it's already created in my mind,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So, but that one's, when the more that we do sit down and apply discipline and notice, right? It's really all about the noticing and the loving yourself up. Like, oh, okay, I'm in resistance right now. Like sometimes applying the discipline standard is just noticing that and going, okay, this is where I'm at, but I'm naming it. I'm not telling myself any other story about it. Like this is what it is. And I remember in the past, if something really feels like, because again, it's the critter brain and the neocortex and the tension between the two, and that can create some really powerful physical and sensations. And in the past, I've been like, all right, if that's really dialed up, then I'm just going to wait for it to subside. I'm just going to wait for it to release. And then I'm going to lovingly pounce the second that it does. You
Mm,
know, that's another way that I,
mm-hmm. I like that.
yeah.
Another one of the standards that really woke me up was the no apologies standard.
Getting some good ones, the ones that we don't often talk about.
Funny. Yeah. I'm kind of picking the ones that are were a little edgier for me. And it's funny since I've been reading the book and working with the standards, I'm just so aware of where I'm apologizing and where that's coming from. And um, yeah. Yeah. So maybe I'm just going to invite you to share a little, maybe just share what it is, or I can read it too. And then just why that one's an important one for us to
Yeah.
too.
And that was an edgy chapter for me to write because I was like, ouch, like this is really hard to say. Um, and so I want to name, we are human beings, like, we're 5D beings, we're goddess beings having a 3D experience. And our 3D experience is rife with the patriarchy and systemic racism and oppression and all kinds of things that are very, very, very real. They're very real, and they create patterns and ways of being within us. And that's a big general sweeping statement. But if we pop out like and really look at it from the top level, and specifically I'm thinking of like, and why the no apology standard was born is that women have the tendency to apologize for their existence constantly,
Mhm.
constantly. And that's how I put it. And that's a very edgy way of putting it. I want to acknowledge it. But in a way, I speak to that in the very edgy way, to be a bit of a pattern interrupt and to wake us up. And so the no apology standard really came and I apologize as much as anybody, right? But it came about because I started to notice some experiences that I have where I would literally physically apologize. And there's a story in there in the book of a ritual that I was doing with my spiritual family at the time, my coven at the time. And I just kept apologizing. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I can't remember. Like I dropped the salt, I dropped the blade, I did this, I did that.
It's a
And
great
my high
story.
priestess was, yeah, she was like, the goddess does not apologize for her existence. Thou art goddess. Goddess does not apologize for her existence. And I was like, oh my goodness.
So
Right.
powerful. So powerful.
Yeah. And then like number of years later, yeah, it was really like, oh, and it took kind of years to integrate, but I started to see very powerful women constantly apologizing. Right. And I tell another story in there of a client who was in her stuff and up against in the transformation wall, so to speak. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I didn't do this. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I didn't do that. I'm sorry, I didn't do this. And I was like, I noticed like strikingly like how it made me feel, which I
Mm,
think was what really got like kind of really brought it into the forefront in my brain.
mm,
And then so I noticed that kind of icky feeling, which was interesting and not meant as a judgment on her, but just like, wow, this is really interesting. This is what happens when the goddess apologizes for her existence. Because this is, first of all, no beings need to apologize for their existence. This was someone, though, who, I mean, she was like Harvard educated lawyer,
mm.
went from 0 to 20K months in like 5 seconds.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, this takes us out of our power in a very, very big way. It doesn't acknowledge the divinity that we are. And like so many of these old kind of lower vibration patterns that we find ourselves going into. And for me, the big one is the confidence standard,
Mm,
right? Like play this game as women sometimes, I think, as powerful women, where like we all have the not enough or I'm too much running. And we're
mhm,
all like in the doubt and the wobble about how if we can do it and can we get the result and da da da. But we also know how awesome we are at the same time. We also know how incredible we are. Like, we're really being honest. We're like, all these doubts are total crap. And the no apology standard is kind of the same deal. It's like, why are we doing that? And so the no apology standard is really an invitation just to stop apologizing
mm,
and to be okay with taking up your full space And now, obviously, if there's something you need to make right, like by all means, you make it right, take ownership and apologize when it needs to be. But we apologize for no reason a lot. And the no apology standard is the invitation to go. There's nothing, I don't have to apologize for how I be. I don't have to apologize. I can be. And I am flat out here. Hopefully that makes sense.
It totally makes sense to me. And for me, it's it's such a what I've noticed as I've been getting more conscious of this in the last few weeks is it's such an automatic um thing that flies out. And sometimes actually I'm noticing it's not that I'm sorry, it's more of an excuse me, like or a pardon me. It's like a negotiating of space. Like I've noticed if, I'm in the grocery store and two people are coming
Yeah,
out, I'll immediately go like, "Oh, I'm sorry," as if that's my fault. That's not my fault. That's just physics. That's just people coming together. Like that's not
exactly.
so sorry for, or yeah, that this like taking it on as fault. And obviously if you need to
Yeah.
make an apology or you've done some kind of harm or you've made a mistake, apology is warranted. But there's so many of these other places where I'll notice that I'll just take that on for the dynamic or the collective that I'm in. And why am I doing that? The goddess
Right.
doesn't apologize. I love that. It's like, no, we can exist and shit happens and things do what they do. And that's not necessarily our fault either. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And if we're in that energy of apology, I mean, and why this is so important for seven-figure leaders, if we're in that energy of apology all the time, then what we're essentially doing is shrinking.
yeah,
You know, we're we're taking this,
collapsing.
ball of fire that we are, and we can't make the impact we want that way. We can't, it's like they're incongruent. Right. So that one's a really like it's a really edgy one, but and I'm, I feel like that's one of the ones that I fail at all the time. I'm still constantly apologizing because I'm an empath, like I think many of the women listening to this are,
Yeah.
and like, leading my team, I'm just like constantly like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? And like, what did I say? And I don't, I want to support them. They're my most important clients and I don't want to blah, blah, blah. But we end up taking on stuff that isn't ours. And what I guess the other thing about it, it's like we vibrate out an energy that's actually really uncomfortable for people to be around,
I'm really glad you made that distinction. Yeah.
you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Like,
and
I
you
mean,
kind
I
of
noticed
go,
that, like, also as a coach, if there's a thing that's been agreed to and the client comes back and with a bunch of apologies, like you were saying,
right.
it's not, um, it's as if the responsibility shifts in somehow, and it's not my job to judge or to do any kind of make wrong. There's life happening and we're
Right.
here to work together. So that, yeah, apologizing really, it can be very disempowering
Yeah, I'm
and
looking at the
icky
thing. If there's
for
a
the other person. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that was really, yeah, and I talk in here in the book about the way that where it comes from and from my lensing, right? All this is from my lensing, but a big part where this comes from is the cultivation of guilt and shame
Yeah.
as a weapon, basically. Years ago, I'm sure Rose Cole. She's a dear sister in this whole, kind of milieu that we're in. And there was something she said like years ago, probably around the same time that we worked together. She was like, guilt and shame are like the best tools for disempowerment.
Yeah.
And
Super powerful tools. Yeah.
I was like, wow. So if someone wants to get us to turn against ourselves, all they need to do is drop a little guilt and shame in there.
Hmm.
And then we do the rest.
Hmm.
And it's like, what? Stop the nonsense. Like, stop. But we've seen this, and again, I'm using pretty dramatic language here intentionally. It's like it's a weapon
Yeah.
and that is in that we turn against ourselves And it's like, we get to remember a big part of what the standards are about. Of course, the very first standard is the divine standard, which is the understanding that thou art goddess and so is everybody else. In other words, you are a creative being. You have this, you're the same substance of the divine. You are, a divine, you're divine form, you're divine in human form, right? And it's like, if we're really embodying that, then we get to go like, what? Like, this is a complete construct designed to keep us down. And I'm not having it. And I'm done apologizing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if we should share the rest of the standards. You just shared the first one, and we've talked about
I'll run through them
apology.
Yeah, I'll run through them all real quickly. And again, you can go get the book, and the link will be here with this interview, so you can go get the book and read it. And I have there's a chapter on each of them. So the first one is the divine standard, and that's really the biggie to me. And part of my stealth mission with this is to get this divine secret, thou art goddess, into the world. And this, of course, is a very, very old teaching that you used to have to spend a lot of time in mystery schools to get, and it's a big deal, and it's out there in the personal growth world now, and I'm thrilled about that. But we also get to really like get what a big deal it is. Like, you're not just your mind, body, spirit, mind, body, emotions. You're actually divine being, and that's the first standard, divine standard. And what happens in your business when you really come from that place all the time? Like, I'm sitting here, Elizabeth, divine being in a physical body, talking to Lisa, divine being in a physical body. Like, if I approach my clients like that, if I approach my vendors like that, if I approach the peeps that write in the emails, like, the whole game changes, right? Like, I could do a 5-hour treatise just on that, right? But that's the first one.
Yeah. Potent.
What's that?
Potent. Very potent.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's edgy. And I want to say, and I say in the book, like, I do not mean to ruffle anyone's feathers on the religious belief system whatsoever. What I really mean by that, I actually really figured it out after I wrote the book, is that the divine standard is the acknowledgement that you have creative power. You have epic creative power, and you have the divine energy in you. And I don't think that kind of goes against a lot of religious creeds necessarily, but that's what we're wanting to acknowledge, And
if the word goddess, I mean, we're pretty safe, I think, in these circles because we talk goddess. But, obviously, if that word is a different word for you, like creator or mother of us all or God or whatever it is, don't miss
spirit source.
Don't miss the message. Find the word that works for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a big one. And all of them really kind of stem from that. It's like, when we really get, holy crap, I'm actually a divine being in a human body. Like, holy smokes. There's a whole host of possibilities that open up that weren't there before. So that's the first one. The second one, and they're not in any order, but these are the order that I cover them in. I think in the book, the second one is the abundance standard. And the abundance standard is the divine truth that abundance just is. The abundance standard is the real understanding of the law of polarity, which is everything you want is already here. If there's a desire that you have, the way for it to be made manifest is already here. The true truth, capital T truth, is abundance. And so when we hold that as a standard, again, all those things, there's so many things that just unfold, right? You start to see your clients as beings that are investing in you, like money comes through them to you, for example, but it's not, that you're taking, because we have a lot of the hangups that we have is that we're taking or hurting or harming someone by charging them. Like, that's a old school one, right? But if we really understand that abundance just is, and we come from that place, then so many more possibilities are on the table. And we understand that in one very particular, in the spiritual sense, there is no lack. Now, are there lack-based circumstances? That's another bomb I just dropped there, by the way. Are there lack-based circumstances? Yes, we're all swimming in them. Yes. Right. But from like, there's no end to creative substance, and it's creative substance from which all things are made. So, like, there's no end to the supply, right? And when we hold that as truth, everything unfolds, right? It's so much, we have so much more access to resources. So that's the second one. The third one is the confidence standard. And the confidence standard is probably the one that people say is the biggest game changer for them. Because with the confidence standard, they stop like, am I awesome? Am I not? Can I get the result? Can I not? Can I charge this? Can I not? It's all just, you know what? Your awesomeness just is. You're already capable of producing the result. You're already capable of creating everything you want. You're already capable of doing what you set out to do. You would not have the idea to do it if you weren't able to do it. All of that is in the confidence standard. It's accepting as truth that you're expecting yourself to succeed, right? And that's kind of a done deal. So the next one after that is the other side of it is expecting others to succeed, the expectation standard. The expectation standard is, of course, my clients are going to succeed. Of course, they're going to get the result. Of course, they're going to like rock it out. Of course, they're going to be, they're going to manifest all their dreams. Of course, they're going to friggin' like do what they set out to do. Of course, because why wouldn't they? That's the expectation standard. Of course, this launch is going to work. Now, we're grounded in the reality of messaging and offers, right? But of course, if I choose to create 100K, of course it's possible. I totally expect it to happen. Super, super powerful. And all kinds of manifestation magic is wrapped up in that one, right? It's the positive expectation for yourself and others that it just is. And of course, of course, I'm going to get this. This is going to succeed. And with those two, a real important piece of this that really dropped in for me as I was writing the book. And I'm an engineer. I was an engineer before doing all this. So I always run everything through my due diligence, and I run everything through a zillion checks and balances, and which is great until it isn't, But one of the ideas that really dropped in for me, one of the realizations is that there's actually no downside, or sorry, there's no upside to doubt.
Yeah, speak about that. That was really powerful. That was really powerful because, of course, the critter brain's like, oh, no, we need to doubt things because that will keep us safe and keep us alive, or whatever the thought is. Or we need to worry about stuff because then maybe that will prevent it from happening. It's just the opposite, actually.
Yeah, it's just the opposite. And now see, the only upside to doubt is if you have a woolly mammoth chasing after you, or a saber-toothed tiger, and you've got to like explode to get out of the way. By all means, like let's be in right relationship with doubt in that moment. But when we've decided to do something, we said, okay, I want 20K in clients this month, and you've created all the conditions for it, right? Because anything can happen, right? As soon as you think of something, it's totally possible. When we want to scale, it gets down to, well, how do I do that consistently and predictably? And that is about creating conditions, right? Creating the channels, all of that, right? You want to set things up. And this is what we do on the strategy side. It's like, let's set things up. So all you got to do is send an email and 10K comes in, right? You can set things up so that happens. But it's like, if you set up the conditions, and if you've got all the dominoes lined up, and even if you don't, right? The second that we go into doubt, we pull our energy back. The second we go into doubt, we're energizing doubt and fear rather than the outcome. And what you energize manifests. In other words, thoughts become things. In other words, what are some of the ways that the manifesting teachers say it? We say what you energize manifests. Whatever you direct your
energy goes, where your focus goes, energy flows.
Yeah, what you focus on, you create. It's the same thing, right? So there's really no downside to it. Like, by all means, use your brain. And I'm a big proponent of using the brain to be, to serve you, right? It's like, brain is a terrible master. It's an awesome co-creative partner, let's say, right? So, right. But there's no, and if you really think about it, like if you really put it under the microscope, like the master's in computer science that I have, you're like, there's no point. Once you've decided to do something, there's no point to energizing doubt. There's no upside to this idea that, oh, maybe it won't happen. What is that getting you? What's it getting you if someone comes into your...
When doubt arises then, because I could hear this question in the field.
Yeah.
what do we do with it? Because it does
Yeah,
arrive. So
it
just
does arrive.
energize it, remember, don't get hooked by it.
Yeah. Well, if you're, it can be a useful pointer, right? So
Mhm.
if it
Mhm.
arises, it can help you look at things. It can help you go, okay, so because we want to look in the bigger context. Like for me, I can pull $100,000 out of my buns anytime I feel like it. Like, and I don't mean that from like a braggy kind of way,
Oh, but I
but like
love
if I
that.
really wanted to, what's that?
I love that you can do that and that you know that.
Well,
Like, thank you for
you
modeling
all can do it too.
confidence and thou art goddess and that, that's beautiful.
Yeah. But I also am at this point, like, does that actually, like, I know I could do it or call it in a certain way, but if I'm over here trying to create my business to hold the structure and the energetics to do that, then it does, like, if I'm doubting, right, then it totally takes me out of the actual creation of it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I can ask myself, uh, you can look at the debt, you can look at whatever the doubt is. So if I'm like, okay, I had $100,000. The doubt might come in like, well, that would require XYZ, XYZ, XYZ,
Mhm.
right? And all the overthinking. I can look at that and go, well, does it really?
Right. Question it.
And then it'll be like, well, yeah, this, then that. Right. But then, like, okay, great. So now I know, now I have more information. Do I need to keep working with this, or what's the choice I'm going to make now?
Mhm.
Right. What's the choice I'm going to make now that I have this on the table? Right. So that's like one example. If
Mhm.
I'm working with someone and they say, I want to create this, and if I know that it's completely it's just not even on the table. One thing I know is that, yes, actually it is on the table. If that's a soul level desire, it is. But if I look at their whole kind of ecosystem and I go, okay, well, that's probably going to send us to a place that's not cool,
Mhm.
right? Or not going to work or hard or whatever. I can then be like, here's the information on the table. Here's what we got. What's the next choice we want to make?
Mhm.
Versus falling into the story, which is doubt, doubt, I can't, I can't, I can't.
Right. Right.
Right. And so when I say there's no use to energizing doubt, we can use these things as pieces of information and we can make choices. And choice is like your ultimate magician flex,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Right.
hopefully that makes
That
sense. But
totally.
most of the time, like
Yeah.
when I say there's no point to it, the doubts are just energy sucks that have no resolution that are kind of like keeping you in the same spot most of the time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Choice.
always. But
Choice.
even so, even if they're valid information, are we going to energize that or are we going to energize the outcome?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
It's a
I
great question.
remember you saying somewhere too that there's so many different pathways, like, right? So if
Yes.
there's doubt arising or resistance arising on this one, it doesn't mean like abort the whole mission. It just means maybe look for, right, lots of other choices. Like I think we get really stuck in that, more narrow thinking. And if we can remember thou art
Yeah.
goddess, if we can remember our confidence come back to these standards, then suddenly for me, what happens is like all these, I'm back in choice again. I'm back being the author of my reality. And
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. It is an ultimately manifestation, which is what some of these are about, is about putting more choices on the menu,
yeah.
right? As opposed to collapsing more choices, which comes right out of
Cool.
NLP, Marin, which is where I was trained in NLP. It's
Yeah.
like, how do we put more choices on the menu? Well, if abundance is truth, then I got a lot of choices on the menu,
You're right. An endless amount. Yeah.
right? I could call in a 100K client if I wanted to. I could do that. I could call in a 100K client anytime. Is that really what I want to do right now, though? No, actually, I want to set up this channel to do this,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, hopefully that made sense.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's get through our other standards before I lose you for
Yes.
we've got the confidence expectation, the discipline standard we talked about.
Yeah. The discipline standard. Let me look at the rest of the book here. I'm going to pull them up. I
And
just did. Yeah. Discipline, no apologies. We talked about that. Benevolent Queen is another really great one. Benevolent Queen is the energy of this is how it is, and that's how it is.
oh,
In other
yeah.
words, I'm the queen. I'm the one calling the shots, but it's done. It's the benevolent queen. So
Yeah.
instead of the queen being in this power over power under relationship, the queen is like, I got my so-called subjects, and I say so-called because the benevolent queen does not, she knows that all her subjects are divine beings too. And so instead, and yet with certain things, the buck stops with her.
Mhm.
So it's this beautiful energetic shift of co-creative partnership while really holding that place of leadership and authority without going into that power over power under. And sometimes in your business, you just got to be like, this is how it is, and that's how it is. And it's also an activation of choice, right? Well, I'm the benevolent queen, and what I say goes in alignment with everybody else's conscious choice. This is what it is.
And it's a
Right.
relief, right? Like it's such a
Yeah.
relief, I think, to be in spaces and with people who are clear about that role as benevolent queen, as leader. Without that, particularly in our businesses, it gets real murky, full of drama. It can go haywire really quickly.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it's in benefit, and it's a sacred responsibility to be that, right? I mean,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
in service of whatever it is that you're creating as an entrepreneur, as a business person. Like you get to be that, or in your life.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that one's really powerful. The money impeccability standard is about being in right relationship with your money. And basically that this one's the most sort of like practical. It's
Mhm.
like no money drama allowed.
Yeah.
It's the money impeccability standard. It's like you don't allow money drama in your space and you clean it up. So it's the most, in a way, it's kind of the most coachy and the most like, super practical application, less boots on the less working with spiritual principles. But it's also really powerful because we allow a lot of drama and we allow a lot of, and the money impeccability standard invites us to really rise up to like, what's the frequency of a 7-figure business owner on the money side?
I really
And then there's
that
the,
one, Elizabeth, too. I just want to say, because I think, especially working with spiritual entrepreneurs, like this, like really staying grounded and rooted around the money pieces are what creates the vessel, the container for more money to come in. So it's like if that's got
that's
cracks,
right.
holes, and leaks, and you're like, I want to be a 7-figure, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to have that impeccability standard there, or
Yeah.
it won't
Like
stay, it won't come in, it won't be
it
a
won't stay.
yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of super practical stuff in that one. And it's super important because it's the 3D like baseline, earth-based foundation, right? And it's also just important. It's important for just congruence. It's like if you're bartering,
Congruence. Love
you
that.
can't barter and have a 7-figure business at the same time. I have never seen that before. And someone can prove me wrong, but
Yeah.
you get the point. Okay, there's two more. The next one is the transformation standard. And this is another one that's really important for me personally, especially for transformational leaders. The transformation standard is the standard of continued growth and continue to look at your stuff and continue to hold yourself of the place of being in integrity and alignment and being what one of my friends calls the real deal, and constantly keeping your energy clean,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not relegating the shadow back to the shadow, not like never saying you're not a human, but like noticing, okay, this is the stuff, this is where, for lack of a better word, my ego is running the show, right? I love the ego, so don't demonize the ego, but it's like the transformation standard is holding yourself to the standard of, I'm a transformational leader, I'm the example. I can't be allowing certain things to continue and pretend they're not,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And holding yourself to just continually to peel back the layers and peel back the layers, which of course we know is required as you grow.
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful.
And then, yeah. And then finally, the last one is divine love, which I call the secret sauce. And that's really more of a practice. Divine love is really getting and practicing, what we all talk about, which is divine love heals everything. And
Mm.
how can we use the energy of divine love to make things easier, smoother, faster?
Mm.
And that kind of takes us back like full circle to the whole inner friction thing. Because if we're, you know, we can use something like if we bring divine love to every single moment, if you bring divine love to that conversation with a team member, if you bring divine love to the client call, if you bring divine love to your money, what is going to happen? And
Mhm.
doing that from a place of grounded power, creative power, not giving your power away, not bypassing, because there's a lot of bypassing in the transformational leader space of all kinds, but really like this is the most potent energy there is. And if I actually work with that and hold that as like, this is what I'm doing all the time, how do things change? They change dramatically. And it also reminds us that like, oh my gosh, I'm just down here in the 3D trying to run this business. Like I'm not the great and powerful Oz, and this stuff is not that important at the end of the day, even though it feels really friggin' important.
Mhm.
Right. Hopefully
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's been so beautiful to just hear you speak about them. And I know for me, working with the standards and reading the book was such just this like breath of fresh air. It reminded me of where I know I stand and who I am and how, yeah, easy it is to lose track of that. So thank you for writing the book, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say just by way of wrapping up today?
I would just really, I guess, you know, um, I want to say whatever, and this is something that I just, constantly reflect to our clients. It's like whatever you're choosing to be, do, have, create, you can do it.
Mm.
Right? You have like part of the thing that I want to bring to the world with the standards and to transformational leaders is that it's totally possible for you to create what you want. And when we embody the frequency of the one that already has it, it makes it very, very easy to call things in. And that's what these standards are about. But they're also about really taking ownership of what that looks like and giving yourself permission to be that person.
Mm.
No one I know who's dealing with money drama really wants to be in money drama,
Yeah.
conscious mind, right? Like no one who is sitting there apologizing really wants to apologize. No one who's like doubting whether or not they can deliver on their 50K is wanting to do that, right? And so noticing that this is like a mechanism that we have, and instead really choosing to be like, no, this is what I am and who I am and what I'm doing. And so I want to celebrate everyone who's listening, who's got the big dream or vision for their business or their life and is going for it, and just really reflect that, like, it's totally possible for you. And I wrote this to help you, to bring it into reality and help you do it from a place of, ease, grace, joy, flow, all those things, while
Mm.
still being human and in the humanness that we have.
Yeah. Wow,
That's what I would
Elizabeth,
say.
thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you wrote it. I'm so grateful to have had this time with you and to share this work. I think it's really going to have an impact on a lot of women, a lot of people. And I hope you all go get a copy of this book. And we'll have a link
Yes.
here. You can find Elizabeth at sevenfiguregoddessbook.com as well if you want to connect with her that way, but we'll make sure to have a link here. Elizabeth Purvis, thank you
Yes. Yes.
so much. Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much,
much.
my dear. Hoot. Yay.